This is the main share meeting, and today it's with great pleasure and much gratitude that we welcome Curtis J, who's come to share on the topic of after having a spiritual awakening for up to 40 minutes, after which we'll open up for the QA portion of this meeting. Curtis, it's over to you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Curtis Johnson. I'm an alcoholic. Great to be here and great to be sober. And Katie, thanks for the introduction. And before I get started, I want to do two things. I want to thank Young for the service that he's committed to the different programs around the world through the Zoom era format of trying to find a way for people like us to find a better way of living. And that is something that is so important to me today. And I'm going to start with a little opening prayer that I've put together, and it says, let's open this meeting by trying to be here now. This is the place where everything happens. This also is a place where seems to be enough. We always think the future is going to be better. Then it happens, and we find all we needed for wholeness of freedom is in the now. So, loving God, we seek to accept this now, this moment where you are and where we want to be. We thank you for all our brothers and sisters in attendance with us and for those who are not able to attend. So tonight we come here seeking wisdom and to share our love with each other. We ask for your guidance so that we can be good listeners in order to one day give back that what has been so truly and freely given to us. And we now pray gratefully for the gift of life that you have granted each of us here tonight. Again, my name is Curtis Johnson. I'm an alcoholic. Great to be here and great to be sober, and by the grace of a very loving God, the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous and people just like you, I haven't found it necessary to consume any form of alcohol or take any mind or mood altering substance since March 16, 2015. For that, I'm grateful. And I've also learned through this program that gratitude is by far more than a word or a feeling. Gratitude has to translate itself into a rigorous action of giving back that what has been so truly and freely given to me. And if I'm not in that mode and I'm not giving it back, I'm a liar and a thief, and the truth's not in me. So that's why I'm here. You know, when Young had asked me, you folks run such great programs over in the UK and the European areas, and that you get to us sometimes 2 and 3 months in advance, and I'm 72 and I forget a lot, and even when I write it down I can't find it sometimes. But I've had a kind of an experience in the last few weeks that I'm going to go over a little bit, but it has nothing more than to do with what I wanted to talk about, having had that spiritual awakening as a result of these steps that we try to give back to the alcoholic, the cocaine addict, the drunk, the addict, the mindful person, that what's been given to us in order to understand why we're here today. And I think that element is so important because I truly believe if I go all the way back to the, let me go back and say one other thing. I was sober from June 3rd, 1986 until August 18th, 1994, while I was under custody of the United States federal government. I'm guilty of flying tons of cocaine. I was famous, not the famous that you want to be famous for. That's a whole different matter. But when it came down to me doing a second step with my sponsor, and I looked up and I said, what in the world am I going to do to maybe millions of lives I've affected or hurt or killed doing what I was doing? The response was, as he looked down at me, he laughed. He said, oh, Curtis, don't worry about it. You're going to just start helping people. And I said, okay. And then he looked at me a little bit more and he said, probably for the rest of your life. And that was at the age of, at the age of 56, when I finally had to surrender my way of thinking and living in order to find this new way of life. And sometimes I used to look back and say, God, why did you make me wait this long? But it was all part of the plan. When I was sentenced on June 4th, 1987, down in Miami, Florida, my parents had been out to visit us. We lived in a beautiful facility and had just had our first and only child a month and a half before, and I was preparing to go away to 96 months in federal prison. A lot of politicians involved in this, a lot of money, billions of dollars, but it all had to do with one problem, and it was the problem of alcoholism, never being content with who I was or what I wanted. If I had $1 million, I needed 5 million. If I had 5 million, 10 was better. 10 was great, 15, and then finally it ended. But even coming out of federal prison in 1994, I've been successful in anything I've ever touched in my life. I just have that ability. I'm a good person. Each and every one of us on this screen today is a good person. We just didn't know. What a gift. What a gift that you've been given that opportunity. We've been given this opportunity to learn how to be better people. One of our old timers in AA, Chuck Chamberlain, said, you know, we have to learn to live comfortably, peacefully, and joyously within our own selves in order to live comfortably, peacefully, and joyously with all the rest of God's children. And I use the word rest too. I've learned today that the mindfulness of understanding the reason why I'm here today is not to judge. Probably one of the greatest spiritual teachers of all time is Jesus. One of his most famous statements was, "Do not judge." When we start to judge people, places, and things, what it does is it sets us into of thought processes of fear, hate, and illusion. And those things will keep you so separated from the sunlight of the Spirit. We can't figure it out. And when we can't figure out, I don't know about you guys, I drank, I drugged, I did whatever I had to do to try to find that relief. But in essence, really what was happening was God's way of putting us to a stop. Somewhere along the line, there had to be a stop. Not everybody gets this opportunity. You know, but when I was sentenced, Mom and Dad had been out. They lived in Scottsdale, Arizona. They had been out to visit when Natalie Marie was born a month and a half before sentencing down in Miami. And they didn't know I had been under federal indictment since June that prior year. And I had to call my parents. My in-laws were with us. My wife of a brief 5 years at that time, that we're still married today. We just celebrated 42 years of marriage. And she will tell you that 96 months waiting for me in federal prison was nothing compared to watching me almost die from the disease of alcoholism. But what was the gift? The disease of alcoholism, or I wouldn't have been there. This is what it's about, folks. You've been given, there's a reason we're here, because I truly believe, and when I talk about it, if I'm talking at a conference or a retreat or live or on Zoom, I talk about a plan. And I believe it's a plan that's been given to each and every one of us. You see, we have tendency as human beings to think that everything matters in the physical tense, in the physical matter of money, property, and prestige. It's just the way the culture of the world is, and it's the way it is. We don't understand that I truly believe we're just a bunch of spiritual beings stopping off for a little short human experience. And when we begin to understand that, begin to look that way, life takes on a whole new meaning. Chuck Chamberlain said we had to have a new pair of glasses. You know, because the human mind in reality lives on fear, hate, and illusion most of the time. That's just the way it is. We came into this world as the most innocent piece of being that there is. And let me tell you something, when it gets close to the end, those of you that have lost people, I'll talk just something about I just went through, the light changes. The light changes in the greatest way I've ever imagined or could have ever believed. I've gone through a couple of physical illnesses, cancers, and this and that. But on March 7th, or May 7th, right here, just a couple of weeks ago, I went in for a checkup. Checkup revealed something in the heart. March 8th, went back for more checkup. Went in for a heart cath. Heart cath revealed a whole lot more. 3 blockages, one being the widowmaker in the heart. March 9th, I'm shipped down to the ICU or the intensive care unit down at the University of Louisville Jewish Hospitals. And on May 16th, just almost 2 weeks ago, I had a triple bypass open heart surgery. And only by the grace of a very loving God, the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you people, am I here today. And I truly believe it was the same part of the plan, my mother told me. Because when I called Mom and Dad and told them, I said, I've got something bad to tell you. We lived on a place called Williams Island, down in North Miami Beach on the water. Beautiful place. As I said, I've been married for 5 years. Natalie Marie, our one and only child, had just been born. And I had to call my parents. And I made that call and I said, Mom, I've got some bad news. I said, and I began to tell her what had happened. And she said, just stop right there, Curtis. I'm my saintly mother. And she said, let me tell you something. I don't really need to know what that is right now. That's not the important thing. The important thing is that I want you to know that Dad and I will be here to help Tina and little Natalie Marie. And we're going to pray for you because one day you will understand this is all part of God's plan for you. My response at that time was, that mom, I said, that doesn't sound like a real good plan. She had no clue. But today I can truly believe and tell you from the bottom of my heart that this is the plan. And the plan is for me to be here to share a message of hope this evening for you folks and for some of my good friends, my good friend Babe and Jean. I don't know who else is on here. People that are so dear to my heart over here on the mainland over here, but more so for you people that I haven't had that opportunity to put my arms around. I get that opportunity a lot. I get to speak a lot. I'm not any better than or less than anybody else, and I didn't come into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous early in life, like a lot of people. But what I have come into with no time to waste that I've found is the spiritual part of the program. And this is what it's about. It goes all the way back to Dr. Silkworth when he says, unless this person has what's called an entire psychic change, also known as a spiritual awakening, there's very little chance of any recovery of the disease of alcoholism. And what is the disease of alcoholism? It's the disease of the mind, the body, and the spirit. And the mind and the body cannot even be addressed until we begin to address the spirit. Therein lies the malady. Therein lies the problem. What do you mean? I was a devout Catholic. I thought I knew God. I had no clue. I had no clue. And this is where I say when I go back and I look back at my history in life and I go back to the age of 56 saying, why did it take this long? It was God's way of saying, okay, Curtis, here it is. I'm going to put you and stop you in your tracks. You've got nowhere else to go. You either be willing to surrender to learn this new way of living. See, we as humans, we think we can figure it out. We think that we can find the solution we're looking for, and it's an impossible factor to the human mind. We can't. God can. The 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and and I enjoy speaking on a Cocaine Anonymous or any other thing, anything to do with the human entity, which is the mind. One of my mentors and my best friends that passed away on July 25th, 2023 was a fellow by the name of Don Major, 42 years sober man in Alcoholics Anonymous, 80 years old, 40 years circuit speaker. Told a story at the end of his life that he and I had talked about for 5 years prior to. And he said, Curtis, he said, you've got something that most of us have never had. And we reflected back to page 63 in the big book. And Don said, for 42 years in his life, he said that the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, the big book, has told me if I followed these principles in all my affairs, everything, but not everything, and everything was the truth. He said, but I overlooked something, and I overlooked something that was so important. And on that page on 63, it's the top paragraph of that 4th edition, where we talk about, and I'm not going to recite it, I'll go back and just say that as we begin to draw nearer and closer to God, we begin to lose fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. We were reborn. Now, wait a second. This was put together by a bankrupt stockbroker and a proctologist that couldn't cover his bottom end, and they're talking about life hereafter. You see, but the whole evolution of AA is a spiritual program. This thing goes back a long way. But Don went on to say, for those 42 years, I never knew that. Yet he always would tell me, let's talk about this again, Curtis. And we got that opportunity. And I'm talking about the inner part of the being of why we're here, what this whole thing is about. Is it just to be here and exist on this earth? I don't know. But I truly believe that there's something more about it. And there's something the more about it part is that, my mom had told me about the plan. My mom passed away a year ago, or in 1995 when I came out of federal prison. Yet I talked to my mother today, since I've been sober and I've been aware of what this is about every single day. She's gone nowhere. Those of you've lost people, they've gone nowhere either. They're part of you. You're part of them, and they'll always be there. And what the entity is, the mystics and the spiritual teachers will tell us, don't wait and think you're going to get to go to this heaven. We're already here. We're already here. And we didn't even know it. We're too busy in the calamity of the world, trying to get money, the property, the prestige, the dignity, the ego, the things that really made us think that we were a whole lot better than, but we're not though. And when we don't get there, then we're less than, and we run into the same problem. But this is the whole part of what the 12 steps are about. It's the willingness to understand that I can't, something else can, and then the willingness to surrender my way of thinking in order to find a new way of living. We cannot think our way into a new way of living. We have to learn how to live our way into a new way of thinking. And that thinking has to come from the heart. And once it begins to come from my heart, where my care, respect, and concern is more for you than it is for me, I got a chance. And is that something that is possible to do each and every day? Not really. But in reality, because we're human beings, and that we're human beings, that we have to face darkness. We have to face darkness each and every day. Because without facing darkness, you won't find the light. And that light that we've been looking for, another old timer, Sandy Beach, talked about it all the time. He too was a pilot. He said, well, all we were doing when we were drinking and drugging or whatever it was looking out there, trying to find this high that we were looking for. We would get there and it would go away, get there, go away, get there, and it would go away, and we would never find it. And then we got there and it stuck and we couldn't get out. Now we're into the addictive part of the disease, whether it's the alcohol, the drug, the mindful part of it. But the real problem lies within. It's the spiritual malady. It's the not knowing that the knowing is already here. It's part of the being, that little bit that you are, that little piece of something. Thomas Keating was a Trappist monk out of Colorado that spoke so eloquently on that, talking about, if we really look at this internally from deep within, each and every one of you folks, myself inclusive, on this screen, has been asked to participate in God's world. Of all the trillions of particles that it took to put together that one you, that one particle that put you together, that God, who I have no knowledge of, God is not a noun to me. It has to be a verb. It's a power greater than myself, and I don't have to know anything. All I have to do is follow these spiritual steps. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed this path. And the path is probably the greatest treasure chest path you'll ever find in your life. Of all the different fellowships of the world, all the Christians, all the Christianity, all the Buddhism, all the Tao, the Tao, everything, it's all about the same measure. We're looking for the same thing. We're looking for inner peace. We came into this world so pure and so innocent, yet the way the world has evolved, as Keating said, our brothers and sisters, they were out there bouncing around in the trees and they didn't have a brain. So God said, let's put a brain in one of these guys and see how they start to operate. And so the evolution of time, everything is evolved. What I just went through less than 2 weeks ago was one of the most unbelievable open heart surgeries you could ever experience in life. This is the essence of the power of what the Creator can do, putting this knowledge into human beings and being able to open me up, unclog 3 arteries, take away the valve or whatever that was, and put me back. And here I am on this meeting, less than 2 weeks away. I can drive in 4 weeks. I've got 3 big conferences I'm speaking at this summer, starting at the end of July and August. But this is the gift. I would have never been here if it wasn't for this program for me, the Alcoholics Anonymous program. But it's really a program for everybody. And I say that because one of my mentors is a fellow by the name of Richard Rohr. Father Rohr is a Franciscan priest out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Several years ago, he was asked to write a book on the similarities of Christianity and Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12 steps. He said, I'm really not the guy that needs to be writing on the 12 steps because I'm not the alcoholic. He said, but really, in essence, we all are. 99% of all human beings are addicted to our thinking. We're the only one that can generate the thought. My mentor, Don Major, talked about that. My sponsor is another fellow out of Louisville, Kentucky, Tim Highland, another wonderful, wonderful man. I've had nothing but the most unbelievable people, men and women in my life that I could have ever asked for. And Don says, the greatest gift we've probably ever been given was the ability that you create the thought. So how do we handle the thought? You can start your life over 100 times a day because everything that I've got some computer stuff going on, and I'll let it go. And this, we have this, we're the only generator of the thought. So if we're the generator of the thought, we have to have an idea what generates the thought. And it's the way we're brought up and the way this thing is about and the way life in general is, we're so busy worried about the self and the self-ego. And then when we don't get there and when it doesn't go the way we do, we have to retaliate. And for me, it was drinking or drugging or whatever. I came from wonderful people. I had no business getting involved with what I was doing. I was actually with a big law firm down in Miami, Florida at the time that, when everybody down there was into the billion-dollar industry back in the mid-'80s, and it was big-time stuff, but it was all about money. It wasn't about my care, respect, and concern of everybody else. But, throughout this program of Alcoholics Anonymous, once we begin to look at it, this thing is an offering to all human beings. Rohrer went on to say that, and he went on to say that Alcoholics Anonymous will one day be recognized as the American gift to worldwide spirituality. That's a pretty big gift when we're talking about all the religions of the world. He says, so he wrote this book that was called Breathing Underwater, Spirituality in the 12 Steps. And what that really came about to do is he said he took two Bible verses out of the Bible, and he's not talking bad about Christianity, but even in Christianity, they've gone into the religious attitude to where most religions are like a container and it has everything on the outside, telling you what to do, how to do it, and this and that, but it doesn't go inside. See, I don't know about each and every one of you folks, but I had to go deep inside to find this thing. And once I got there and I saw it, it's like a kid. I spoke last fall out at the Pacific Group in Los Angeles, and I got up in that podium. I don't know, there were 700-800 people in the dang place, and I got up there. I said, "This is better than at Christmas time when you get a little gift, and you got to show everybody. You got to tell everybody about it because this is how good this stuff is." But that's the essence of the 12th step of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the gift. It's the gift of being able to look that you might have helped somebody beyond yourself. The care, respect, and concern for all God's children. And this really becomes just astronomically loving and caring, and the ability to understand the importance of each and every day. My wife will say sometimes we'll come out of Mass on Sunday and we'll go to the grocery store, and she'll say, "Who was that you were talking to, Curtis?" And I said, "I don't know, Tina." She goes, "Well, you were talking to him." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I don't know." And she said, "Well, what were you talking about?" And I said, "I don't know that either." And and she laughs. But you see what happens, people, when we become in tune with ourselves, when we get rid of that wreckage, when we go in the fourth, when we're willing to surrender, and no one ever wants to surrender to God because God didn't save us. They threw us in. God threw us into the pit we were in. We can't get out. But really, that was the part that had to happen in order for me to get to where I had to be. And we go into those fourth and fifth steps, and we begin to go back and look at what's wrong with me? Why is it? Why did I want? Drinking was fun. I had to drink when I was in ninth grade. I had to have 2 3/4 Colt 45 stout malt liquors on a Friday night if I was going to talk to a woman. I was scared to death of women. I've loved women all my life. I was scared to death. I had no courage. But boy, you put those 2 3/4 16-ounce cans of Colt 45 stout malt liquor in me, and I was rocking ready to go. But that's just the essence of what we were all looking for. We were looking for that high. Whether it was drugs, sex, rock and roll, it didn't matter. But what I found in Alcoholics Anonymous, or I found in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, is what those that have come before me and you that are here tonight. It's a new way of living. And the living is so important because at any moment, at any time, God takes people when God needs people. And it's never the people God takes that he needs. It's those around the people. I truly believe. Is this the end of everything? I said, no, I don't know. I haven't got there yet. But what I do know is there's something coming. And I want to be a part of it. Because rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed this path. And as we go on through life and we go through the transition, the transformations of our lives, each and every one is being so uniquely different. My wife Tina will say sometimes, she says, it's a good thing, Curtis, that God only made one of you. And then she laughs. But it's the truth. That's how unique you are individually. You are special. You are so special, you're beyond special. You've been asked to participate in God's world. Not everybody gets this opportunity. Most people are out there, that addicted mind, a regular human being. Most people are just suffering. I mean, most of us, for me, I could go to Mass on Sunday and be okay for about a half hour afterwards, and then I'm back right to the same spot I was at. I didn't know how to live. We call it 24 hours a day. I believe it comes down to a breath at a time. As we breathe in breath, we take in life. As we breathe out breath, we give life. If I don't breathe in or I don't breathe out, we don't have life. Tina told me this story the other day I came out of the operation and they still had me under incubation and they had stuff and I had all this stuff and my daughter she lost it. She thought I was gone. But you see, God didn't have that planned yet. Not for me. The plan was, Curtis, you've got to come back. You've got more work to do. And at the age of 72, my sponsor, Tim Hyland, writes a message every day out, and he calls it the last quarter of life. It was originated out of Richard Rohr's facility, a lady that was down out of there that worked with hospice. And, when you get around people in hospice and if you've ever had people in your families or wives or husbands, or even more so kids, pass away, there's moments where you see what's happening. And you can see what's happening right now. The 10th step of Alcoholics Anonymous, after we've gone through this process of identifying the real problem, and this is just the way I view this, and I teach as I sponsor a lot of men and women. It's just a wonderful gift that I have the ability to do, not better than or less than anybody. But the ability to understand that when we get through these steps and we make the amends that we can, we understand the character defects, why the things we ask this God of our understanding to help take them away. I haven't had one character defect taken away at all. But if I'm going to lie to you, I know I'm going to lie to you before I lie to you, so I try not to lie to you as much anymore. It's not that we're perfect, but we know the difference. But there's something about getting into that 10th step where we've entered the world of the Spirit, where I truly believe you are, God is, I am, and God is everything. I'm looking out in my backyard. I've got a doe we live in a beautiful piece of property in Taylorsville, Kentucky, out in the woods, and it's misting today. And one of my neighbors came by and took the corn out. I feed deer all year long, and the deer and the turkeys come, and then the coyote will come by, and then the raccoons will try to get their little paws in on it, but it's all part of God's kingdom. It's the trees. It's the ability to be aware. I have a friend of mine that I sponsor. He's 42 years sober. This is several months ago, and he said his name's Ricky. And he said, dang, Curtis, he said, I've got to make an amend. He wanted to make an amend on a first wife 42 years ago. I said, Rick, you really think is it that important? Well, it's bothering me. I said, well, don't let it bother you. I said, I think you probably hurt her more than you'll hurt her. It might help you. So that's why we do that with the sponsor. And I said, let's try something different. Let's learn what awareness is about. You see, when we enter the world of the Spirit, what happens is we become aware. We talk about our inventory, we talk about in the morning and the night, but really it's working towards the 11th step, where we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. And the word improve becomes very important here, because that's talking about the now. You cannot improve yesterday. You can't improve tomorrow. The improvement has to be now. And that's called awareness. And awareness has been taught in the mystical and spiritual worlds forever. Carl Jung tried to do the same thing with Roland Hazard. Roland Hazard tried to do the same thing with Ebby Thatcher, and then to Bill Wilson, Dr. Bob, and then to us, this whole thing. And the 11th step is probably one of the misunderstood steps, I believe, in Alcoholics Anonymous. Mark Houston used to talk about that. And the 11th step is how do you become aware every breath you take? And it's an impossible feature. I don't think you can, but you can. You can try it and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And awareness is being able to experience the moment you're experiencing. And that gives you the opportunity to be aware. And I told my friend Ricky, Ricky, every time that comes up, if it's bothering you that advice, I said, go someplace else. I said, what do you mean? I said, just start looking around. I said, look around and see something. If you see something on the ground, why did you see it on the ground? I don't know. I said, well, then go pick it up. He says, what do you mean? I said, you just became aware. Awareness is being in the moment you're experiencing, no matter where or what you're doing. See, when we get into this, and especially for you that are parents or grandparents or people in general, when we become when we become in tune with ourselves this way, we become what's called an attraction. And that attraction is the aura, the energy that we emit from what comes in. I referred to it about that in the grocery store. I didn't know why I started talking to somebody, but somebody started talking to me because I feel like flypaper sometimes. But I guess I like to be flypaper. It's the greatest thing that has ever happened. We're not scaring people anymore, folks. Our hearts are bleeding for their help, bleeding to help them to be that peace of mind, to be that God of our understanding. And this is the real gift. Because once we begin to get there, as Ricky calls me about a month and a half later, says, I picked it up. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I started talking about that first wife. He's had 4 wives. He said, and I saw something on the ground. I picked it up and I stopped thinking about her. I said, keep coming back. And he understood. Oh, it's that easy? I said, it's not that difficult. We just make it that difficult. But that's the mindfulness of us. So in that 11th step, we're talking about trying to be better. And somebody please give me, oh, here, I've got time. Okay, there it is right there. I can go on for hours here, and I don't want to do that. I said it's not that difficult, but this is this is the game. This is the game of life. We've been given the opportunity to enjoy this time here on earth. But I truly believe that this is going to go beyond. Because when I read that or quoted that little part of the third step that you're born, when we go into the 11th, we go into the 12 and 12, and we look at the 11th step, it too also talks about being reborn. The being reborn part is so important because I believe it creates a sanctuary within ourselves for those folks that we've lost, those that have gone before us. I'm sitting in the hospital. I know a few folks on here heard this story or not, know what happened. And I co-host a men's retreat over at Mount St. Francis in New Albany, Indiana. My sponsor started 22 years ago. And one of the fellows that sits on the board was, while I was in the hospital, I'd just been operated on, came out of the ICU, and Tina came in and she was so happy to see me. She said, I've got something to tell you. I've got some bad news. And a friend of mine had been hiking over in Indiana with his granddaughter. And I think it was a lady friend of him and her granddaughter. And they were hiking and it had been wet and the trails were a little tough. And his friend's little granddaughter almost slipped and fell off a path. And he grabbed her arm and brought her up. And once he got her up in the path, she was fine. He slipped and fell down in the ravine and died. And Tina had to tell me that. And I was so, they just put my chest back together. When they go in to do open heart surgery, they crack you from here all the way down. And I couldn't cry. But I've cried a lot since then. And I've cried, not so much that I know that where my friend Steve's at is fine. I've cried for those that are still suffering inside and outside of these rooms in the world today, that they haven't been able to get what we've been given so freely and truly. This is the gift. This is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. If I'm thinking more about you than I'm thinking about me, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm going to be all right. I came out of that surgery and I got home. It'll be 2 weeks Thursday. and I'm all right. It's beyond belief to me. I'm going to my home group meeting in Taylorsville, Kentucky to give a lady friend of mine that I sponsor her 11-year token tonight. Normal people don't get this opportunity. We've been given the gift. And this is the gift that's been so truly and freely given to us. This is the spiritual part of the program. This is the spiritual program. And you guys, you folks, men and women alike, or whatever we are, doesn't matter to me. We're the ones that have been handpicked. And especially if you're new, you get a sponsor and you get involved with this program. And it's a program of action, which means you've got to continuously do it. And facing darkness every day, no matter what we do, only creates more light, because even in the scientific world, there is no total darkness. And that light is a divine spark that resides within each and every one of us. And that divine spark is so strong. It's so strong and so wonderful. I'm going to close with a little story I tell all the time when I finish when I'm speaking that, I don't know, about 5 or 6 years ago up in Johnstown, Ohio. I've got 2 of the greatest grandkids in the whole world. Grayson Matthews, 12 years old right now. He's a smart little guy. He went to space camp a couple years ago. He's brilliant. He's not going to be a pilot like me. He's going to be a space camper or maybe a better pilot. He doesn't know the story yet. One day he will, but that's okay too. And I have a granddaughter, Hadley Marie, that's 10 now. They're actually up in New York vacationing for the week. One of their my son-in-law's sisters was graduating from college, so they're up in New York. And we were up in Ohio visiting, and I was standing in the backyard of their house, and I was standing there talking to my son-in-law's father. His name was Steve Sossman, good Baptist guy, never drank, never drug. And he said, "Curtis, I got to tell you something." I said, "What's that, Steve?" He said, "Those 2 little grandkids of yours, they talk about their pappy more than anybody I've ever seen kids talk about pappies." I said, "Oh, come on, Steve." My head started to swell up. My heart was shrinking. The ego was going. I'm thinking, "Oh, wow, this is good stuff." And I backed off. I said, "No, stop. Don't go there. Just let him." And I said, "Steve, they talk about you and Janet all the time." He says, "No, Curtis, let me tell you something. Those kids talk about you and Tina all the time." And he pointed his finger at me and he said, "I think it's that AA stuff." He knows the story. And it made me feel overwhelmed, knowing that somebody that has no idea what this was about, what this gift we've been given, is truly what it is. About a month and a half later, before we moved to the country, where we had a beautiful home in Louisville, Kentucky, and it was a Sunday afternoon. My mother-in-law, 91 years old, I call her grandma, had lived with us for 9 years, and it was her famous Sunday chicken dinner, and we had 9 people at the big table looking out into the woods there too. And at the very end of the table was my granddaughter, so she would have either been 4 or 5 at that time. And we're eating away, and then there were neighbors with us, the in-laws, everybody was there. There were 9 folks, I think, and we're eating, and all of a sudden Hattie looks up, this little one looks up, and she goes, "Hey, Pappy, you going to one of those meetings tonight?" I was stunned. We never talked about any meetings before. And I looked around the table and I looked at Tina and Natalie Marie, my daughter, and my mother-in-law, and my in-laws, the neighbors, and Grayson over to the right side. And I looked at Hattie and I said, "Yep, Hattie, Happy's going to one of those meetings tonight." I said, because no matter where I'm at, whether it's up in Ohio, down at our place in Perdido Key, Mexico, Disney, it doesn't matter. I'm going to find a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's you people that saved my life. You showed me how to find that treasure chest I've been looking for all my life. And it wasn't out there. It was inside here, deep within me. About a minute later, remember the space camp boy I told you about, Grayson Matthew? I get a tap on the shoulder. And I knew something was coming. And he looked at me, tapped me, and everybody just stopped eating. And he said, "Pappy," he said, "what do you guys do at those meetings?" I didn't know what to say, folks. I looked around the table with tears rolling down my cheeks, my wife, everybody again. And I looked at Grayson, and God said to Grayson through me, "Grayson, this is where Grammys and Pappies go and learn how to be better Grammys and Pappies." And that little boy looked at me and he pointed his finger. He says, "Pappy, you keep doing that." Folks, that's the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the program of the 12 steps that each and every one of us are offered us today, to give back, to truly understand why we're here, and what this whole thing is about. If anybody hasn't told you that they love you today, I want to take that opportunity. My name is Curtis Johnson. I'm an alcoholic.
Any more question?
Can you hear me now?
Got you.
Yeah, hi guys, Mela and I'm an addict. Thank you so much, Curtis, for your share. It was amazing, amazing to hear you. So my question is just around step 11. So I went through a period of time last year where my recovery was becoming quite mechanical and a bit sort of tick boxy. And although things have changed a fair amount today, I can sometimes still fall into that mode of sort of feeling as though I have to meditate at a certain time and that kind of thing. So my question was, have you experienced that? And also alongside that, what does your prayer and meditation sort of practice look like today? Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. You know, each and every person is different. And as I talked about that 11th step, there's moments of meditation and prayer. When I wake up in the morning, I don't have time to get to my knees. I think as soon as I take a breath, I'm thanking God for this opportunity and then for the direction. But I think the greatest and the easiest method that I've found in order to be aware, and I'm going to talk about, let's just understand awareness. Awareness is what we're experiencing right now. It's the only place it can happen. And if you have trouble being aware, just stop and listen to your breath. You see, you'll find God in silence. God is not, you can't find the power outside in the calamity of the mind. God will be in the inner part. You know, and as you begin in the morning, there's different ways. And when I work with different people, men, women, and like, there's different ways of doing that. There's different recitings. When we say different reciting prayers, what we're doing is we're getting ourselves away from the individual thought process. Once the individual thought process, the ego creator, gets nullified to where it's not the predominant thought process, we begin to become aware. So just work on yourself. It's between you and a power with nobody else. We can read all the book and we can read and recite everything, but it's the ability to eventually, it will happen to where you're going to understand that here it is. It's here and it's now. And, you know, when we can live that way, all of a sudden, when you're around children, you're around other people, as I said earlier, it almost becomes like you're a piece of flypaper, but it's a good piece of flypaper because we've become an attraction and all we're doing. You see, the element of the power, the God of your understanding is more you than you are you. Think about that for a second. Keating talked about that. God is more me than I am me, as you are you. So now you are a part. I like to say throughout the day, sometimes I'll say, okay, Master, I got a big decision. I need some help here. What do I do? And the Master will say, oh, Curtis, you're doing really good. You show me how you're going to do it. And I said, no, I need a little help here, buddy. I said, this is a big one. And the Master will say, no, Curtis, you show me what to do. And I said, okay, do I go right or left? And he says, show me. And I go right and I go boom and I hit a wall. And the Master will laugh and say, okay, Curtis, next time go left. Because it's through that little bit of darkness. That darkness, even during your darkest times in life, if you're here today, God never left you and never will. And that's the essence of really what the meditation is about. For me, anyway. Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Ella, and thanks, Curtis, for the reply. Next, Michael, do you want to come in with your question?
Yeah, please. Thank you, Katie. Michael, addict. Thank you, Curtis, for your share. It was absolutely mind-blowing. I can't believe, like, less than 2 weeks ago, you have an open heart surgery, and here you are now. You know, just if there was ever a demonstration of an unshakable foundation, I think you might be it. Like, so my question is, obviously, like you talk about it's in the now, and we've only got like the 24 hours in this moment. What do you do to ensure your 24-hour daily reprieve? What is your routine? And once again, thank you very much. I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Michael. You know, the routine is it comes back again down to awareness. From the moment I wake up, we all have plans throughout the day. There's things that we have to do. We've got the outline of our day ahead, the things that we want to do, and it's never going to be what you think it's going to be. There's always going to be change to it. But what I do is the awareness of understanding that no matter what it is, I know that my decision making has to be centered around around the things that I've learned and being persistently courteous to all God's children in all God's world. And the 12 steps will keep you in that position. Throughout the day, it's the combination of those 12 steps that creates the essence of really about what it is giving back. What is being aware? What is being present in God's world? We don't, it's not an easy thing to do. I've got a friend of mine, Scott Lee, out of Nashville, Tennessee. He would not mind to use his name. And he gets stuck in traffic jams and people are cussing and honking horns and this and that. And he puts on a red clown nose and starts blowing bubbles at people. He said, and I mean, it's just absolutely goofy. But it's funny. It's the way Scott does, instead of getting tied up in the self, because the problem comes back to the ego. It's the self, the generator of the thought. And when we learn to be more mindful for others, no matter where or what we're doing, that thought process doesn't become so controlling. But it becomes repetition. Rarely we say in the 9-step promises, we will intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. So instead of jumping back at somebody when it didn't happen or do whatever. I mean, there's moments and times that you've got to protect yourself, but I'm talking about on a normal day, there's going to be elements to cut you off in the grocery line, to cut you off in the car. Somebody said something you didn't like, but you know what? You can take that moment, no matter what happened or what transpired, it's your next thought and your next decision. And Don Major was probably the greatest man I've ever met. He called that being persistently curious. And he said, I bit my tongue a long time. I bite my tongue a lot. I just don't let my mouth open up as I used to sometimes. Because it's not about what I think. It's about let me accept what you are, how you are, or what has happened. Because most human beings don't know. Most people, even with the intention, don't have intentions of hurting others. They just think that there's some type of a justification behind it because they didn't know. But if we work these 12 steps and these 12 traditions and these 12 concepts and say persistently courteous with ourselves, your life will change. Rarely have we seen. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Next up, I can see we've got Ryan. Come on in, Ryan.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Ryan, I'm an addict. Thank you for your share, Curtis, man. It's really amazing. Really spoke my language.
Ryan, you've gone on mute.
Yeah, I've got it. Yeah, sorry about that. My question is, mate, so I'm back for relapse. I'm like 34 days back. I had 18 months clean time, and I felt like my connection to God was really strong. I felt the presence of God and conscious contact. But I'm really struggling with this at the minute. And I know that I need to get out my own way and sort of just hand it over and surrender. But I just can't seem to. I don't know if I'm chasing it too much, so to speak, if you know what I mean. But I just wondering if you've got any advice. I'm sort of just struggling to really feel God in my life at the minute.
Is he coming back?
I think his question, Curtis. No worries. Go on.
Ryan, we say the word relapse. I don't know. I'm not sure if I have to believe in the word relapse or not, because in essence, everything that happens for a reason. And the reason that it happens is that we weren't where we were supposed to be when it happened. And there's two thought processes that the human mind works off. One is a dualistic mind, the right and the wrong, the good and the bad, pink, the black, the red, whatever it is. And the hate, the like, that type of mindfulness is not contingent upon the daily maintenance of our spiritual conditioning. And the other thought process that you can learn and utilize is a contemplative process, which is a completely neutral, accepting the moment as it is. So if you go and you're going to use again, or you're going to drink, or you're going to do, you know what the consequences will be. So if you know what the consequences are going to be, why are you going to do it? Because you were looking for that high. Well, you hadn't found the high that you've been looking for all your life. I found something in Alcoholics Anonymous that I'm higher than a kite right now. I'm up around 62,000 feet and climbing. And it doesn't get any better than this for me anyhow right now. And I truly can believe it and can be the same for you. So, as we can, don't look bad upon yourself of what happened, that transformation, that whatever transpired for you to have to go through what you had to go, now you know the difference. So what do? In Alcoholics Anonymous or in Cocaine Anonymous or whatever we're doing, we start helping people. Just get out of yourself and start helping somebody. Doesn't matter whether it's somebody in the program or outside of the program, a wife, a child, just be there. Because we've been given this opportunity, and this opportunity is it's so heartwarming once we begin to see it and you see the light go on. And there's those that suffer that sometimes it never happens. But it's all part of the same plan, that plan that the power has, the God. I don't question the plan. I don't question losing a friend, falling off a cliff. It bothered me that happened, but it's all part of that plan. My job, I know today, is to be here on this meeting at 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in Taylorsville, Kentucky, to share a little bit of strength and hope with you guys. Because when I'm sharing my hope with you, it's helping me as much as it's helping you. And if I don't continue to do that and I stay dormant within myself, I become dormant within myself. I have to see it. I have to be a part of it. And it's a hard thing sometimes if you're just on Zoom. I highly recommend get into some live meeting. I think I do 19 or 18 meetings a week. 6 of them are live. The rest of them are all on Zoom. Bunch of men every morning. I go on. It's 5 days a week. And, you just stay with yourself and keep yourself. When that thought process comes up, you've got to abort it and get out of there and get back right to where that kept yourself okay. So, Ryan, you keep doing that. I'll keep you in my prayers, buddy.
Oh, thank you for that. The last 3 questions will be Lorraine, Asa, and Becca. So, Lorraine, come on in.
Well, thank you, Katie. Hi, everybody. My name is Lorraine. I'm a cocaine addict. How fun is that to say out loud? I'm usually in AA, but I belong here, folks. Curtis Johnson, did you give us all a scare or what? Oh my gosh. Oh, it's so good to see you. I can't even say it. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to see you. Yep, I'm sitting here and I'm just thinking, what am I going to ask him? How about, can you tell us a little bit about your own personal 9th step amends process and maybe a little bit about how you help others to do their 9th step amends? Because, like some people say the hardest ones first or the easiest ones or there's all kinds of things you hear about it. I'm just, any old experience you want to share on your 9th step amends.
Yeah, great to see you, Miss Lorraine. I love you from the bottom of my heart. When we look at our 9th step, we're talking about amends, things that we're not asking for forgiveness from. We're not saying, what we're asking for is, to at least let them know that we've erred. So many times until I can learn to forgive myself, I cannot forgive you. Until I can learn to love myself, I cannot begin to love you. And I think this is the important part about this when we're talking about amends, because there's certain amends that you don't make. You don't go to hurt people. Things that might bring up the wreckage of the past, especially when you're talking about husbands and wives and even family members, because we did things. Most human beings have hurt people. I don't know about you all. We've got a family member in my wife's family that she separated, 130 people for something that happened 55 years ago or something. I couldn't imagine living like that. I couldn't imagine that. And Lorraine, I talked about when I mentioned the fact that I hurt a lot of people smuggling tons of cocaine. I know. And the only thing that I can do, and I can ask God, I can't find them all, but I can do what God wants me to do, and that's to help other people. And once I begin to help other people and can continue to do that on a daily basis, I know I'm doing what this God, because God's already taken care of them. We don't have to worry about making the amends to try to justify anything on our own selves. The justification part becomes part of letting God be a part of that justification. The care, respect, and concern that God has for me today, especially again after what I just experienced, I'm overwhelmed with love, and I'm overwhelmed with joy, and I'm overwhelmed for what I've been given, and through these 12 steps to be able to be a human being another participant in God's world to try to be the best I can be today. And it's important when, you sit down with somebody else. I mean, that's why we have a sponsor. That's why we go through the 4th and 5th steps. And we get in those 8th and 9th steps. And there's some that are more important. That might be a little bit easier, but there's some that may never be able to be made occur. We can do writings where there's different ways to do those things. The objective of that is to empty a backpack. Each and every one of us has a backpack. And if you can keep that backpack empty while you're flying, your angle of approach, as Don would always talk about, in landing will become a whole lot easier. But it's when we're carrying stuff, that stuff, the little tiny things, those stuffs that gets to make a big giant thing, a big people stuff that keeps us separated from the sunlight of the Spirit. When I can wake up in the morning knowing that I've done and tried my best, and it's not going to be perfect. I've done and tried my best, and I will continue to do and try my best. I know I've done what God's asking me to do. And that's the greatest amend that you can make to anybody or anything, is that amend to yourself. Because God has kept you. God's kept you here and alive for one reason. And that reason is to help somebody and to be a part of that. So I hope that helped out a little bit, Miss Lorraine. Great to see you, honey.
Yeah, thank you for that. Next up, is it Asa, please?
Yeah, hi, Asa. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Young. Thanks for everyone for your service. And Curtis, wow. I'm in the UK. I was born in Ohio, so I'm technically your northern neighbor, and I'll have a lot of family there and go back. So just incredible. This is my first time on this meeting, and I just wanted to just say how incredible it was to discover, the WhatsApp group, and then to be here today. I'm early in my recovery. I'm just 6 weeks and a bit. Sorry, 6 months. 6 months. 6 months and a bit. Just so wonderful to hear you, because it felt like waves washing over stone, and I'm the stone, and just getting all the sharp edges off. I really love that you talked about this conscious contact. I've been thinking a lot about that, and I realized that actually I've been living unconsciously my entire life. I just turned 50 years old. So I've spent 50 years of my life essentially living unconsciously, which is asleep, right? I've been asleep my entire life. And now I've been given this gift of having the ability to be conscious. And I really kind of understand that for myself, and I'm not yet at steps 10 and 11, but I try to do all 12 every day. Excuse me.
Asa, I'm so sorry, but can we get your question? Because
I'm going straight to the question now.
Lovely. Thank you.
Sorry about that. So, Curtis, my question for you is, in talking about conscious contact, and you talk about the mind or us being the generator of thoughts. Can you say sort of what's your perception on how one gets out of that generation of thought? Because certainly some thoughts are positive, and there is some energy that comes from generating. You talk about generating that kind of idea of energy, and this fact that 98 to 99% of humans should be there. So I'm just curious your thoughts on how do we get that generating of thoughts out of our lives?
Thanks so much, Asa. As the generator of the thought, and I said a little bit earlier, the human mind lives on fear, hate, and illusion. And most of that is a concept of the fact, the thought of something hasn't even happened yet. We're going to sit there and worry about it. We're going to figure it out, or we're going to go that way. And for me, what I continuously have to work on is more about the care, respect, and concern. The living part, to where my care, respect, and concern, and my heart, my thought process has to be generated from within, from the heart more so than the mind. The mind is where the ego resides. The mind is where the thought process begins. And if I get off the log, I've got to get back on the log. So what the program will teach you and allow you to do is we learn to get rid of all those things, the ego, the character defects, those things that keep us separated from the sunlight of the Spirit, and which is also a part of you. What happens is your thought process will begin to change. Now, whether it's your thoughts are about someone else, something else, what they did, what she did, I really can't judge anybody anymore. One of the greatest things I've learned in life today is do not judge. I can't, because it's not my job to be judging anybody. Because when I understand that you know, and it's okay for somebody to judge me, because I really don't care, you know, what you think of me or what, because I know I'm doing the best I can. And you'll find, especially around children and younger people, you know, I remember doing things, you know, when we yell at kids, and yeah, I couldn't do that today for a billion bucks. Yet I was one of those people that did that also, but I didn't know. In this program, what this does is it creates the awareness. It creates the awareness of how to live. It's how to live in order to find a better way of thinking, because our thinking is our problem. So go in more mindfulness to your center, your inner self being, and think, you know, what would you want that individual to be thinking about you? And that let yourself be more overwhelming from the inner part instead of the outer part. It's not about what's on the outside. It's definitely about what comes from the inner side. And it's overwhelming to me, because it gets better and better and better, even when it's tough. And when that darkness comes and that light returns, oh my gosh, it gets better. So Asa, you just keep doing that. Thanks, buddy.
No, thank you so much for your great question. Becca, do you want to take us out with your last question, please?
Sure, thank you. Hi, Mr. Curtis. I really just wanted to say hello. But I do have a question. I'm not sure if you got a chance to read or understand any of the stuff I wrote about my son's surgery, but considering the contemplative mind or thought, was there any moment of fear when you found out the severity of what's your condition?
To be truthful, for a minute, there was a moment of fear. But the fear vanished. I'm prepared. I don't fear death today. But you know, well, I couldn't have said that 10 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. I wouldn't have known. I couldn't have said the same thing. But I truly believe today, through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12 steps anyway, that I'm on my way to something big. And I can't wait to get there. Don said the same thing. Don said right before his death, he said, you know, I've read this thing for 42 years and I didn't understand it. He gave 6 talks right before his death. 3 were on Zoom and 3 were live in Louisville, Kentucky. This man was in hospice and went to 3 live AA meetings. And he says, I really don't want to leave my wife, Sharon. I don't want to leave my 2 children. I don't want to leave my AA friends. He said, but if the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous has told me this much about the truth, he says, I can't wait to get there. He passed away a week later. So I had that moment of fear. But you know where I went right back inside, honey? Deep inside. And I said, you got me, buddy. God's got me. And I'm okay today. Thank you. I love you.
Thank you so much, Becca.